You know that feeling when you follow someone online, watch their work evolve over time, and you find yourself really curious about where they've actually ended up? Not just what their feed looks like, but what their life actually looks like over all this time. That is the whole premise behind our Where Are They Now series here on the Maker's Playbook. Because the truth is, a single conversation only ever captures that particular moment. And a lot can change, obviously, especially in 5 years. Today, we're revisiting one of my favorite moments in this podcast's entire existence because it is the reason, the moment the podcast actually started existing. The conversation that started it all. The one where I randomly DM'd another Potter I had been following on Instagram and asked if she'd be willing to talk to me for an hour. Without knowing who I am, without the show even existing, to point her to anything else. The fact that Camille Beckles of Camille at the Wheel said yes still stuns me to this day, and I am eternally grateful, because the rest, as they say, is history. We get into so much in this conversation, from the massively community-driven commission work that has defined the last couple of years of Camille's ceramics career, to what it actually looks like to build deep relationships in the pottery world offline, and to the honest and maybe even a little countercultural truth that keeping her day job has been one of the best things Camille's ever done for her art practice. Whether you were here for episode 1 with Camille in the first place, or if you're brand new to the show, this conversation is a reminder that there's no single timeline for a creative life, and that the most sustainable version of this making life might be the one that you'd never think to put on a vision board. So let's get into it right after this quick word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by The Community, your creative business support system with over 100 makers from around the world. With both the practical education you need to make a living from the things you make, found in our masterclasses on topics like finances, marketing, and SEO, plus the emotional support of fellow makers who truly understand what it's like to try and make a living from the things we make. It's like having both a business school designed specifically for artists and a team of colleagues who actually get what you're going through. But you don't have to take my word for it.
Hi everyone, this is Melissa of MWY Pottery. I've been a member of the Maker's Playbook community for over a year and a half, but not consecutively. I first joined when I was relatively new to selling my ceramics and wanted more support in doing that. This year, I joined a different ceramics mentorship program to focus on my artistic development and paused my community membership to decrease business expenses, with the plan to rejoin the community at several points throughout the year for the master classes. But who was I kidding? I didn't even last a month. I missed the community and the people so much, especially our co-working sessions, so I just rejoined for the year. So if you're a parent like me and you're signing your kid up for summer camps right now, and you don't even hesitate to pay the same cost for a 1-year community membership for a 1-week K-pop Demon Hunters dance camp for your child, I kid you not, but you hesitate to treat yourself, consider this an invitation to learn more. Feel free to ask me questions on Instagram at MWYPottery, and I hope you join us soon.
Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the show where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things we make. I'm your host, seasoned entrepreneur of 15 years, Rebecca Ikes-Carr.
Sometimes enjoying things is the right choice. As people who are prone to work, we have to remind ourselves to enjoy.
Something tells me that right there might be our theme of this entire conversation. For how things have shifted in the last 5 years. So, yeah.
Yep.
So with that, I'll do an official welcome back to the podcast, Camille.
Thank you.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just going to fangirl immediately so everybody knows the podcast exists because you said yes to my random ass self 5 years ago, sending you a DM on Instagram being like, this doesn't exist yet, but would you be willing to talk to me for an hour?
Yeah, you have to say yes to a lot of stuff.
I mean, you didn't have to.
That's true. You don't have to. But there was a period of time where I was intentionally saying yes to everything because I was trying to figure out what felt good and what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And I've now reached a point where I'm saying no to more things because I've figured out what I wanted to say yes to. But saying yes to you was like an easy and positive decision.
And I am so, so grateful because not only it's episode 101 on the podcast. You're the first one. Spoiler to everybody, we started at 101, which sounds silly because that's 100, but whatever. That's a whole different story. Also, it led to like getting to see you in New York. You introduced Francesco to his favorite seafood experience this side of the Atlantic. So there's just a lot of subsidiary benefits here.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good yes.
I think he would get on a plane to go to Astoria Seafood and just get back on a plane and come back if that was an opportunity. Not a problem.
That's a reasonable day trip from the Midwest.
So before I get ahead of myself, for people who haven't heard of you on the internet, if that's even possible at this point, who are you? Where are you? Whatever version of your bio you want to give, it doesn't matter. I don't know why I'm trying to be this formal.
Okay. Yes, my name is Camille Beckles. I am Camille at the Wheel online everywhere on Instagram, and my website is camilleatthewheel.com. I make primarily functional pottery. I really like to emphasize beauty and function, beauty and utility. So I love making things that look nice on their own. I love making things that feel good to hold. So I have a lot of textural work in my pieces. But at the end of the day, for me, a pot needs to function. So I really try to make sure it's a good blend of things that are beautiful and things that are useful. This is not an original thought or an original quote, but I know that a lot of potters feel that their work gains meaning when it's used, and I definitely identify with that element of the craft. So that's something that I strive for in my pieces.
That is a much more elegant way of putting what I have been trying to put into words for many years. So I'm going to just like record. I am recording this. What am I talking about? I'm like, let me record that and go back. Because I think for me, the artistic challenge is making it functional. Like, not to diminish the work of people who make non-functional things, but like making a functional teapot is a completely different challenge than making a teapot that looks beautiful, but you're not trying to pour something in without spilling.
Right. Your focus is different and the things you're balancing are different. And for me, the joy of pottery and ceramics comes from use, not just my own work, but also other people's work. Like, I buy a lot of other people's pots. I really enjoy the interaction of using the object with also finding the object really fascinating for whatever reason. Its construction, its surface design, the way that the handle feels, any number of reasons to enjoy a piece. But for me, I really like interacting with the pieces that I own.
I haven't actually thought about this before, which sounds so dumb now, what I'm about to say out loud, of like, that is, in many ways, that is a very unique thing to ceramics, and then maybe also fiber arts or fashion, in that, like, I'm thinking about the way that we interact with a photo or a painting or something more two-dimensional is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Single sensory, right? You're looking at it, and that's all. Whereas as soon as you get into three-dimension, as soon as you get into functional, then you have this tactile experience along with the visual experience. Of course, for a lot of us potters, then you've got the food experience that comes along with it and connecting that. Like, there's just levels. But anyway, per the usual, you never know where these conversations are going to go. Like, not at all where I thought I was going to go, but that's fine.
We got time.
Right? Well, what kicked us off 5 years ago was that, as I'm scrolling along the internet, your logo just still 5 years later is iconic. It works so well as a logo in tiny, what we talked about then is true now in terms of like being recognizable in a tiny little space, like an avatar on the internet, being recognizable in one color or multicolors or whatever. And so it was like, that was the thing that jumped out then, to be like, hold on a second. This girl knows a little bit about business and what she's doing. Like, I want to talk to her.
Partially, I have a certain inclination towards the business sense, and partially I have a tendency to be a little bit type A about certain things. And so when I was first launching my business, and I think we talked about this the first time that we met, I didn't want to just haphazardly throw up an Etsy or do an Instagram sale. Like, I wanted things to be very polished because I had a vision long term of like, if I'm going to do anything, I want to do it well and I want to do it excellently. And so for me, that meant making sure that I had a very clear point of view and a very clear kind of voice and vision, and that came through. And so the branding was a part of that, which has served me well over the years.
Which is the perfect example of a great brand, that it is 5 years later and it's not
Mhm.
like, it's not dated. It's not like, oh, I kind of need to update it. Like, that is the goal of a great brand. Like,
Mhm.
I'm trying really hard not to use the word timeless.
Yeah. If it's your own head, that's not going to change. So that's a good logo for that reason. My haircut does make it different sometimes, but like I can slap a bow on a short haircut and it's still mostly fine.
I was literally just about to say, like, but I recently redid my headshots because I grew out the bangs. So I've had to change, because my hair changes enough that I had to like change the cut or
Yeah.
change, so it's like you have kept yourself to within a range of a haircut, I suppose. Like Diana
Yeah.
can't pull that off because she's changing all
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. With fabulous iterations, but it couldn't be based on the hairdo.
Right. I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, the other super interesting thing that surfaced 5 years ago and was, maybe not ironic in the way that Alanis Morissette uses the word ironic, that our conversation then was really the perfect example of the whole reason I started the podcast in the first place, which was I was looking at what you were doing online. You were getting featured in magazines, had a work partnership with Starbucks at the time, like all this type of stuff. And so as an outsider looking at what you're doing, I just right away assumed this was your full-time gig. And
Mhm.
then we sat down to talk and you were like, oh, no, 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 no. And I was like, but the PR side of it, the marketing side of it, I was like, but okay, hold on, explain. So
Mhm.
talk to us a little bit about, I guess the question there is, what has stayed the same and what has changed in the last 5 years, which is basically the
Yeah.
entire question and the rest of the time we talk.
Uh-huh. Yes. So I still work full time. I'm not with the same organization that I was with when we first met. I've switched jobs since then, although I'm still working in mission driven work, but it's in the healthcare space instead of in policing. But yeah, I still work full time. I still do pottery as what I call a very active side hustle. I have done less of the grind over the past several years than I did when we first met and first started talking, partially because I burned myself out on doing that. It's really hard to, even if it's your full time job, it's definitely hard to keep up with that. But when you're only doing it part time and you're really trying to squeeze out all your nights and weekends and keep up what seems to be like a full time production schedule, it's really difficult. And so I have found over the years that where the balance that I like the most is when I have one or two big projects for that calendar year. And then I supplement that in between with my own drops, which I sell usually through my website. So I'm not doing as many markets. I'm not schlepping my pots around as often, but I still like staying connected and try to stay connected with people through website orders. And then these bigger projects, which have kind of sustained me creatively and financially in a lot of ways over the last few years. Like I've started teaching a lot more workshops. I've also been able to do collaborations with places like Artistic Tile, where I was a part of an ad campaign that they had where they had different artists create and wear clothing made out of tiles as a part of a marketing campaign called Bringing Art to Life. And so I was the ceramicist for that year and got to do this whole photo shoot that was featured in magazines that appeared all over the country, which was really cool. I got connected, thanks to some other potters that I know, to this woman named Akeisha Durrett, who is this fantastic kind of multimedia artist. She works across all sorts of mediums. Her work is all over the country. And she, in 2023, was commissioning a group of potters to create ceramic vessels to hang inside of this monument that she was building, literally built from the ground up, like it was a construction site in Arlington, Virginia. And this monument was to honor the people of Queen City, which was a neighborhood in Virginia that got torn down through eminent domain to make room for the Pentagon. And this was a Black neighborhood. So all of these Black people, 903 to be specific, were displaced, forcefully displaced, to make room for the highway that led to the Pentagon. And so she had this commission and she had this budget to build this monument to honor those people. And so she hired 18 ceramicists from around the country, Black ceramicists from around the country, and we each created between 70 and 80 vessels to fill this monument in honor of these people who were displaced. That was an incredible project, really, really meaningful. It was really challenging. Anytime somebody asks you to make 70 of anything that you've never done before, an appropriate response would be like, no, this is crazy. But also a better response is, yeah, sure, I'll figure it out. Because it's one of those things where in the moment, it's really challenging and difficult and it stretches you, but the result is so worth all of the effort and the strain that's required to complete it. And so that was a fantastic experience. And that also really taught me how I want to operate in this space because Nikisha is really collaborative. And so she's the type of person where she's got this big vision and she's brilliant, but she's not a hoarder. Like she spreads around what she has and she really uses her opportunities as an opportunity to create community and lift up other people. And so that model of operating, especially in an art space where I think there can tend to be a scarcity mindset, to see somebody who is very accomplished, who is also focused on lifting up others and creating community wherever she goes is a really inspiring way. That is really inspiring for me and just gives me a lot to think about in terms of how I want to conduct my career and how I want to interact and kind of be known in this space. So that was really awesome. And that has led to other opportunities as well, like with the Obama Presidential Center, where, again, Nikisha has this amazing monument that she has envisioned that's honoring Harriet Tubman. And so it's going to be this shawl that was the shawl that she wore when she was helping people escape from slavery. And this shawl is made out of ceramic tiles. And so, again, it was another project where she says, I have this idea. Have you ever made tiles before? And I said, no, I've never made tiles before, but like I can figure it out. And they're notoriously difficult, but like, you know, this is a challenge that if you're willing to trust me with, that I'm willing to figure out. And so it was a similar situation where she had this vision and she needed other people to kind of figure out with the fabrication, like what are the specifications, what type of clay do we need to use, that sort of a thing. And then there was a group of us that together we made, I think the grand total is, I made 1,000 tiles just myself. So, and I think there were 8 of us. So it's somewhere between 8 and 10,000 tiles that are going to be making up this sculpture that's going to be installed permanently at the Obama Presidential Center when it opens in Chicago in June.
Also, just logistically, for anybody to know, you're in New York City, you work out of a community, like a shared space.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just thinking like managing the production of 1,000 tiles in the space, physical space that you're in is its own challenge on top of learning how to make tiles.
Yeah, it totally is. And I didn't think about that because when I get into my head that I need to do something, I just figure out how to do it. And so whatever the limitations are, that's a known entity. And so the challenge is not in bumping up against those limitations. The challenge is in figuring out how to make work within those limitations. And maybe there's like a more exciting motivational speech that says like, if you're faced with limits, figure out how to overcome them or like break them. But for me, if I've got a known entity that I can't do anything about, then it becomes, okay, well, how do I make this work? Because I got to get the work done. So what do I need to do to work within these limitations to ultimately accomplish the thing that I'm trying to accomplish? And for me, that doesn't just include physical space. Like I don't mix my own glazes. Probably this is a bad thing to admit, but I don't really care about glaze chemistry. I mean, I think it's important, but it's not something I've chosen to focus my practice on. I don't feel any type of pride in developing my own glaze palette. I've always and only worked out of community studios. So I have always and only ever figured out how to make it work with what is available to me. And so, you know, working with studio glazes, working with studio space, those types of limitations don't bother me. It's really more interesting to me to figure out how far can I go with what I have as opposed to I need to do something new and novel all the time.
Which I find refreshing. Like, I think that's really comforting in some ways, and also just the reality of ceramics, at least, in that, like, it is, to me, and people have heard me say this before, it is the one medium compared to so many other art mediums that, like, there are so many different things you could become an expert in, right? You could
Hmm.
become an expert in glaze chemistry. You could become an expert in atmospheric firing. You could become an expert in production throwing. You could, like,
Yeah,
and all of those are a single step to making a finished piece. It just makes sense to me to have chosen, like, this is what I'm the most interested in, and this is the direction I'm going to go, because it's not possible to, I don't want to say it's not possible. It is incredibly difficult when it's not your full-time thing to have enough logistical time to dig that deep into every single aspect that is functional ceramics.
totally. Yeah. And I think you said it in a better way. It's not so much that I don't care about those other things, but with the limited time I have, I don't have time to test glaze chemicals and run a bunch of test kilns and get the results back and make tweaks. Because if I'm only doing this anywhere between, let's say, 5 to 15 hours a week, I would rather focus on being a good potter. And for me, that means making good forms, things that are an appropriate weight, things that look good, like the proportions are appropriate, things that pour well if I'm making a pouring vessel. And so, with the limited time I have, that's just where my focus has been for the past few years.
Yeah. Speaking of limited time, the thing I have always been curious about, as you know, when we spoke in early 21, or it was like everything was blowing up and you were saying you were kind of going all in on the grind and the typical, like, shop drops, markets, and all of that. As you've realized that's not what excites you and shifting, are you able to kind of naturally remove the pressure from people seeing your, like, the number of eyeballs that come to your work are no small number? Is there a pressure of, like, oh, I need to do, or I should do a shop update? Or is it just kind of, have you found a magical way to just, like, release that and be like, this is what it is and this is my practice?
Yeah, I definitely still feel the pressure to do shop updates for a few reasons. Number one, they do generate income, and income is necessary. Number two, it is a good way for me to stay connected with customers. And so I do sometimes worry about falling off of people's radars if I'm not as active on social media, or if I'm not as active with promoting when the next shop update's going to be. I think creatively, they're important because as much as I love partnering with other people in commissions and in these bigger projects, it is still also important for me to continue developing my own voice. And the only way that I can do that is by making my own work with some regularity. And so if I'm not focusing enough of my time on production, it does make it harder to develop new bodies of work and to continue to explore ideas that are my own as opposed to executing on other people's ideas. So the shop drops are important for that reason. But I think I still am, hopefully, am able to stay connected and quote unquote relevant by giving peeks into the other things that I'm doing. Like when I was
Mm.
working on the tile project for Nikisha and for the Obama Center, I was posting quite a lot. And even with that project, the vision was not mine. It's somebody else's vision, but there was still a lot of creativity that went into that in a way that I have not experienced with my own work, because I was hired as her consultant to figure out the ceramic components of that piece. And so that meant doing a lot of research and figuring out what type of clay do we need to use. And it needs to weigh, each tile can only be a certain weight because 8,000 tiles, you don't want that to collapse if it's too heavy. And so we had to figure out the dimensions and the shape and what is the glaze palette. Like, she had a spec to follow, but within that, there was a lot of room for variation. Even when it kind of goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago about working within limitations. If you have limitations, there's still a lot of ways that you could exercise your creativity to figure out how to meet the spec within that box, within that container that you're given. And so even if I'm not creating my own work leading up to a shop drop, I still feel a lot of gratification and a lot of satisfaction in applying my creativity to achieve the specifics, even if it's somebody else's vision. So the shop drops are important, but also being able to exercise a different part of my brain and a different side of my creativity when working on these other larger projects. I've actually found that to be really, really enjoyable over the past couple of years.
I think that's incredibly helpful because what I hear from that is you're also recognizing that people are connecting with the work that you make and presumably you as a human for a myriad of reasons, right? Like it's not only let me show you how I'm making this mug so then you can come and buy this mug from the shop update, right? That is a very transactional experience.
Hmm.
And there's some people who find what we make on the internet and they like it and they want to buy it and it is a
Sure.
transaction. And that's fine. But I think for most of us even for people who are full-time, you still have a limited capacity as an individual maker. I presume that most of us are looking for a little bit more than a transaction, right? If it was only a transaction, then create your designs, put them into specs, send them off somewhere, have them then be produced and market the heck out of them and sell them.
Sure.
But like we have this connection to the work we're making. Presumably it's more enjoyable when we have a connection to the people buying them. And so the logic leap I'm making here is that the people who are interested in following your creative journey and how you're pushing yourself and getting involved in these projects are going to be more, I don't know, enjoyable to sell work to in a shop update, even if you never meet them, just like better customers.
Absolutely. And I have always felt lucky because I've always had great customers, people who give positive feedback, people who repeat, like they come back and they buy stuff over and over again, people who have bought stuff from me once years ago and now they need a big custom order. And so they're getting back in touch to see are you still making pottery? Can you make this set of mugs for me? And part of this is just living in like the Instagram, social media, sort of self-promotion age that you can't just make a thing. You also have to be a brand, in air quotes. And so the way that you present yourself and the amount of access that you're willing to give people to help them know you better within reason, like parasocial relationships are obviously weird and bad and a part of our culture right now. So I don't think it's that, but there is something to be said for letting people know you in some capacity and making sure that people can understand what are your values and what motivates you and what is making you excited to make this thing. That just helps create a sense of that it's not just a transaction. It's it's not necessarily a direct relationship, but you know something about that person and there's a story behind it. And that I think helps with longevity and helps people continue to want to come back. In addition to, you need to make good stuff. If your stuff is bad, it doesn't matter how cool you are. You need to make a good product. But I think being able to form a more meaningful relationship outside of a transaction is a really helpful part of making sustainable customer relationships.
This actually reminds me of you. I hear a lot, at least online, and maybe not recently, but it always ebbs and flows where, there's either the group accounts of the ridiculous customer requests or something like that. And so there's a lot of conversation around trying to remind people that there's a human on the other side, right? When you are getting crazy requests or expectations that are just not realistic. And we as makers, it's easy for us to get frustrated that someone has forgotten there's another human on the other side. But the flip side is also true to me that if we're not reminding people that it's a human on the other side and our hands, culture has trained us to have, the Amazon effect, whatever we want to call it, the expectations we have of a purchasing experience,
Right.
the speed in which something's going to arrive, the confirmation emails or, whatever, all of these things, that's kind of been drummed into us over and over again. And so there is a responsibility on us as makers to remind people so that you do get that lovely experience with a customer. I don't think I'm blending a bunch of subjects in here, but people talk a lot about finding your ideal client, right? Or finding your ideal customer. And in reality, it's also a matter of creating your ideal customer, creating your ideal audience, because you're educating them on something and then people interested in that will stick around.
Right.
I guess is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. I think that's probably true. I think also with a handmade object, the expectation is a little different or should be different, because there are plenty of small businesses that are run online. And, in the Shopify economy, it is very easy to get set up and kind of get your business off the ground and then to scale. I shouldn't say it's easy to scale, but the infrastructure is there. And so that makes it accessible for a lot of people to get set up. And if you're shipping out something that you're not making yourself, then sure, maybe it is reasonable to have a certain expectation of speed or a certain refund policy or whatever. But when you add in a layer of the handmade element, and especially the time that it takes to make ceramics, I think those are compounding factors that it's important for people to understand when they're making a purchase and when they're interacting with you, that it's not the same playing field as if you were sending out some other item that is, pre-manufactured or whatever, as opposed to something that somebody is, sitting at a wheel or at a banding wheel, making and decorating and firing and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It really makes me think about, and I don't have an answer to this, and it's not really a question, but it just makes me think about like all the pressure we put on ourselves to show up online in a certain way, market in a certain way, promote in a certain way. And so much of that is influenced from the larger retail experience and consumerism that doesn't actually match what we're doing. And like that, if we can approach this from a different way, like, because correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I see you showing up online now is not like, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of pressure. It just seems like when you have something that you've done or you're interested in or you're excited about, you share that. And it comes across as this very casual, comfortable, genuine thing, as opposed to like, my marketing schedule says I have to post on Sunday and Tuesday and Thursday. And, let me fill this in.
Totally. Partially, I hope that's received positively. Partially, that's just the default because I have not been successful at sticking to any type of schedule.
It was meant as a compliment.
Yeah, like I definitely had aspirations like maybe 2 or 3 years ago to be more disciplined about that and to show up more regularly and to post more and like send out more frequent newsletter updates and things like that. But the reality is that I haven't prioritized it. I hesitated to say that I haven't had time to do it because I think that we have time to do a lot of things, but it's a matter of what we prioritize. And so I'm in the studio and a lot of times I forget to record these days or I'll forget to snap a picture. And so I'm posting just as like hey, I'm still here. Here's like a thing I did at the studio today. And this isn't super polished, but like, yes, I do still make ceramics. But then other times, like if I have something bigger that I do want to share, I will try to put more of a focused effort into it. My focus has just been a little bit more scattered, I would say, these days, which has made me show up more casually, as it were, on the internet.
But I think that's the great, massive benefit of having not made it your full-time work. Because I think
absolutely
there was a moment, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from my perspective, even 5 years ago or any time in the last 5 years, the recognition that you were getting, the successes that you were seeing, that could have easily tipped you over into, okay, I'm going to run with this.
Yeah.
Right? And then the pressure that comes from that is just a completely different game than being able to settle in and say, let me explore these big projects and focus on that rather than trying to also squeeze in a shop update at the same time because I have to pay my rent.
Absolutely. Yeah. I speak from a place of extreme privilege because I do not eat based on whether or not I sell a mug to somebody. My source of health insurance is not pottery. And so that means that I have a lot more freedom within pottery to, yes, I want to make smart business decisions because who wants to lose money unnecessarily and who wants to be wasteful? I don't. And my goal when I started the business was always originally my goal was that I wanted my hobby to pay for itself, which it has always done. And so beyond that, I of course want my hobby to generate revenue. And I don't think I could call it a hobby anymore, but I want it to generate revenue. But because I don't have the pressure of it being the only thing that generates income for me, that gives me a lot more freedom to be able to say no to things, to not have to worry about the frequency of shop updates, to take more risks. I participated in 2024 in the cohorts program, which was founded by Simon Levin. And Simon was my mentor for that year in 2024. And so I wasn't really selling very much because I was focusing on working with Simon to figure out a new body of work that I wanted to create, and just taking some time to invest in myself and understand more about the processes that were interesting to me and how to grow artistically. And that's something that I was able to do because I didn't have, in my situation, I didn't have the time pressure of needing to also do a shop update every, 2 months. Because I was still working full time. If I had been working full time and trying to do cohorts and trying to make and sell the same work, that there just wasn't enough time.
I would have been worried about your sleep.
Exactly. Having those alternate sources really frees up a lot of space for me to operate in the ceramics space it's more enjoyable for me. And like I said, there are still some prudences to take in terms of the business aspect of it. I don't ever want to end up in the negative at the end of the year, but I don't have the same pressure of, if I don't sell 80 mugs this month, I'm not going to be able to pay my electricity bill.
Yep. As you were talking, it's I had an aha moment for myself, because I'm thinking back over these last 5 years of the podcast to how many conversations I had about voice and finding your voice, and how frustrated I would feel with that in those times. And now I'm realizing that was potentially very connected to these opposing forces of needing to make work to sell it to buy groceries versus the very natural amount of time it just takes to sit with the craft and explore and let things fail and try this other thing or develop this new skill because the vision you have doesn't line up with what your hands can do. Just when I saw you last month at Ensika, and obviously by the time this airs, the cat will be out of the bag. I have a day job. We're paying our bills elsewhere. And this last Ensika was the first time I prioritized going to sessions that were aesthetically interesting to me, and taking pictures of stuff that I was I want to explore how I can bring that idea into the other work that I'm now I've made more pots in the last 3 months for myself that I then either cut in half or, just exploring than the last probably 5 years.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, because I have always had a job while doing this, this is kind of the only way that I have ever known to exist in this space. I think there's a lot to be said for living a fully artistic life and for making your income off of your art. I think that's awesome. If I was maybe 20 years younger or so,
Yeah.
how much of my age do I want to give away? That maybe I would make different choices. But I'm happy with all the choices that I made. I genuinely can't think of any regrets that I have with where my life is or how things have turned out. But I do admire people who it is their full-time work. They have built a life of creativity. I think that's awesome. And also, I think that you can change your life at pretty much any age. And so there's nothing to say that the things I'm doing now are the things that I will always be doing. And I certainly don't feel stuck or oh man, I'm down this path and it's too late to change. I don't feel that way. But I am comfortable. And I think comfort, especially in this economy, is not something that I take for granted, or
And
something
New
that
York
I am
City?
willing. And in New York City is not something that I don't take that lightly. And as a result, I also I'm not making any sudden moves. And so the full-time balance with the artistic balance has worked well for me. And so for the foreseeable future, I think will continue to work well. But that being said, being around people like Simon and people at Ensika who that is their life and their career, and they have figured out a way to make a sustainable, wonderful life from that. I think that's awesome. That's not my story, but I think that that's really great that exists for people. On the flip side, I know a lot of potters that are working full time and they're grinding and they don't have health insurance, or they are really stressed out and they,
Yep.
as big and as successful as you can be or as you can appear, there are a lot of stressors that
Mhm.
go along with that. It's so hard on your body, which I don't think that the general public realizes when you're just, buying a $80 mug. Another real thing to contend with. And like, are you willing to put in that physical and emotional labor and stress in pursuit of your craft?
Yeah.
They're just choices that we all have to grapple with.
It's been interesting for the first time in my adult life having this alternate option, like, having never experienced this before. It was like there was a pressure release valve that just like,
Hmm.
when you're using like a pressure cooker, an Instant Pot or whatever, and it was just like that valve got
Yeah,
released and there's now brain space to think creatively. Now, I think there's plenty
totally.
of creatives who have figured out, who have found a level of success in their building that you could also carve this out in a full-time aspect where like
Absolutely.
you have your production thing, you're efficient about it, it's in demand enough, you spend X number of hours every week, and then you give yourself that open time separately.
Totally.
I also think like the thing I want to drive home with the point, and I think you were making this as well in terms of like you could always change your mind, is what you need in any point in life will also change.
Totally.
Like
Yeah.
to your point, if you would have gone after it in your 20s, maybe you would be full time, but also the energy we have in our 20s is just different.
Yeah.
Like the food we're willing to eat.
Yeah. As I approach, let's just say the end of my 30s, I do feel different.
I can't eat that much ramen.
I've actually never had ramen. The 99-cent stuff, I never ate that in college.
You've just had good ramen. You've never had
I mean, it's good, yes, but I also am like kind of roll my eyes at ramen because I'm like, why does soup cost $20?
hashtag New York
And I
problem.
understand like the broth and all this other stuff and whatever, but I'm just like, do I really want to pay this much for like noodle soup? And that's like diminishing what I know. Like I understand that there's so much that goes into it and it has to cook forever and whatever, get the broth rich and all that stuff. I'm just saying the gulf between the 99-cent dry stuff and the $25 they try to charge you at a restaurant, that has never made sense to me. And so for that reason, I've always struggled with ramen.
That's
So
amazing. That's amazing. I mean,
anyway, I didn't eat it in college.
that's fantastic. But that is the point that your standards change over time, your requirements change, and also like what the world throws at us changes, right?
Totally. Yep.
For us in this moment, having made this change, it was also just after this much time and getting through starting a business in a recession, getting through COVID, doing all this stuff, like it worked and it was incredibly successful. And also, I was tired.
Yeah.
Like, that's just that.
Yeah.
And so I think that doesn't mean it won't shift again in another 5-10 years,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Who knows?
And that's another thing too, going back to the shop update piece. I, in the past couple of years, I've had the opportunity to teach more workshops. And that has been really cool because that's just another way to stay tied into the craft. It generates income, which is nice. If I'm not selling pots, but I'm teaching, then there's still a way for me to, to make some money to contribute to the practice, which is important. But it also opens up, it's a different muscle. As much as it's important to focus on your own work and developing your voice and, building out your body of work, I have also found a lot of joy in teaching. And at first I doubted myself because I thought like, what do I have to say? And like,
Mm.
a little bit of imposter syndrome was at play. But I've met some really awesome people through doing those workshops. It has stretched me a lot because if I have to explain why I'm doing something or how to do something, it
Mhm.
makes me that much better at the thing because you don't want to, get in front of your class and have egg on your face. But it's also like really humbling because sometimes things do go wrong and you have to just say like, I'm just a human and like, yeah, I squash pots all the time too. So that's another component, I think, being able to diversify as much as possible where your income is coming from, but also where your satisfaction is coming from is
Mm.
another important key to sustainability within this space.
I also imagine sustainably, not only financially, but creatively, right? Because to
Totally.
your
Yeah.
point,
Yep.
teaching is then opening up these other synapses in the brain that when you come back to make your own work is like, okay, let's see what that does.
Yeah. And like you learn stuff from students too. Like I learn things from the people that I interact with that improve the quality of my work when I get back into the studio.
Something that's been on my mind for obvious reasons lately is, it's interesting to think about like what we as creatives and artists, the type of space and time we need to percolate an idea, to explore, to get good at a craft is at odds with trying to sell it or capitalism or consumerism or whatever. Insert whatever 2026,
totally,
economics. And so it is very incredible when it is a full-time thing, but also that like it can become, you can have moments within these stages of like you need time to explore something. And so the reality of life and economics, what do you do to maintain being able to explore so that you're still in the practice of the craft? Like I'm just thinking about how many people talk about, and I'm terrible with names, so I can't think of an exact example. But, the artists we hear about and the memes you see all the time of like so-and-so didn't have their big break until 45, till 65, till 85. And it was like, it took that time to like find the thing, and it's a matter of figuring out like how to stay in it, whatever that means, regardless of, what's paying the bills, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. It takes time to develop something that you are proud of, much less something that you want to then offer very vulnerably to somebody else to purchase and to evaluate and to judge. And so being able to carve out that time is really important. In my case, because I have the benefit of not eating every meal based off of what I sell, I can take that time. I still feel the pressure to stay relevant and to stay fresh and to just stay present because I don't want to squander the opportunities that I have or that I've had. But at the same time, it's nice to have the freedom to explore and the freedom to take on, like, if Nikisha calls me, I'm saying yes, regardless of what it is. Like if she's on the phone, I'm going to say okay. But I'm in a position where I can do that because I don't have the pressures of these other things that I have to do. So I can say yes to the things that are really exciting and the things that are really challenging and know that I have space to take on those challenges, which is a privileged stance, I think.
For my brain as well, like I'm also thinking like, oh, I can now reinvent, like I've got my little like wish list of workshops that instead of being like wouldn't that be nice someday, being like, oh, I could actually maybe reasonably take a week next year and dig deep. I think there's still ways to get that creative nourishment in a really deep, fully focused kind of way that isn't every single day of life, but also if you're full time, it's not every single day because to the point I've personally been belaboring, you have to do all this other stuff. And so in that way, it's the same whether you're full time or not, that like you have to intentionally take out these chunks to be like, I'm going to spend this time this week in a workshop to explore an idea. And being able to have the security to do that, is a different thing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I've belabored this point. So I'm just going to like hard shift us somewhere else. I don't have an out. I'll refrain from doing the Ross impression now that you use every time somebody uses the word pivot. That's all I hear in my head. I'm a child of the Friends generation.
Yeah. I hate that show. So please, so you can skip any references to it. I am team living single all day, every day.
It's going to be those ones that I think definitely potentially does not hold up over time. I said that because there's stuff now where you're just like, that doesn't make any sense. We know things now. That doesn't make any sense. But anyways, well, I think we've talked a little bit about both what has stayed the same and what has changed, but I just want to come back to it because I feel like there are so many layers to that in 5 years of like the way you have been able to explore the craft or, the changes with the projects. I don't have a specific question here. I just wanted to come back to thinking about this whole idea of where are they now, of like what it was like 5 years ago and where you're at now and what that looks like. I don't know. That's a terribly formulated.
Let me take a stab at answering the question that you struggled to ask.
I was like, the question that didn't exist, that would be great. Thank you.
I would say a thing that I have experienced in the past several years is that a lot of the opportunities that I have had in the ceramic space have not been ceramics oriented directly, in that they have not involved me making anything. They have involved me putting my corporate skills to use in an artistic space. And so that has shown up in ways like helping other people figure out things like Zoom setups for workshops. It's been like in a more kind of consulting capacity. And it has been in figuring out like social media strategies and creating content to promote other programs. And so it still feels creative because it's in a creative space and it's in the ceramics field. But I think there are certain components where, even though we are artists and we are creative people, like we should still respond to emails in a timely fashion, and we should still present ourselves professionally, and we should still try to have our P's and Q's in order, because that just presents well and it gives you a reputation of a reliable person, a person who knows stuff and can be trusted to help with stuff. And that has opened up quite a lot of doors for me that I wouldn't have necessarily anticipated when we talked 5 years ago. Just having a certain level of professionalism and reliability and a kind of just like even keeled approach. I like to think that I'm easy to work with and that I'm, like don't create too many problems or too much drama. And so just being like available in a professional sense and kind of showing up in a certain professional sense, I have found has served me well in this space. And that's not something new. Like I think I've always been that way. But in terms of how that has impacted my ceramics career and the spaces I'm occupying right now, that has opened up more doors for me in the past few years than I would have anticipated when we first talked in 2021.
I don't know if this is true or not, but I also feel from watching everything grow over the last few years for you is that it shifted from the internet, like Instagram and social media, to in-person connections.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's not true, but it seems like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think over the last 5 years, I feel like my place within this space has really grown in the sense that my relationships with other potters has deepened, especially with potters whose work I really admire. Like people who I have looked up to, I can go to certain spaces like in Sika or certain workshops and say hi to certain people who to me are just like titans of this space. And they know who I am and they're happy to see me and they will give me a huge hug. Being able to be known by the people that I admire and whose work I admire, and people who have been in this space for a really long time, people who have studied this stuff in school. And that's not necessarily giving more credence to like a formal education, but just like people who have really dedicated their lives and their careers, like being able to have relationships with those types of figures has been really wonderful. And that makes me feel like I'm part of the club, so to speak. And I don't say that in a way that's meant to be exclusionary, because I think there's a lot of problems with the quote unquote club, and some of the ways that the ceramic space historically has operated and has been exclusionary in a lot of senses. So I say that with some degree of caution, but just for me, knowing the people whose work that I have looked up to and that I have admired, having been able to form relationships and kind of meet more of those people over the years has been really awesome. And even amongst my peers, like I definitely feel a lot more connected to other ceramicists that are also on like a similar journey or a similar learning path to mine, which is really cool. And I think coming out of the pandemic, like I've always been in community studios, so I've always been around other potters to some degree, but not always with rigor. And I think in the past like 3 years or so, I have had a lot more of a much more rigorous relationship to ceramics, where I'm not just making Hello Dottie cups because people like them and I want to sell them, even though I love them and I will always make them. But I'm thinking about things in like a much more rigorous way than I was when we first talked. And part of that is because of the relationships that I have developed, where people are pushing and asking questions like, well, why did you make that carving there? Oh, because I liked it. But why did you like it? Like, what is just really kind of forcing to go levels deeper And yeah, I think that has been driven by those relationships.
What would you say, like, for someone who's in that Instagram space of, like, admiring people and watching and, you know, where my brain is going is I recognize that it can feel like a giant chasm between seeing people online do this, having other makers that we admire and those titans that we all feel that I think everybody has, and that chasm between where I am sitting on my couch looking at those people and how to actually start those relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I also think people assume that I've been able to do that over time just because I'm an extrovert, right? Like, oh, well, you're
Mm-hmm.
comfortable walking into a room and like striking up a conversation. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's true. But like, I was also sweating the first time I interviewed you because I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
I had
I
no
was
idea.
trying
We also
real.
didn't. We weren't on video, so I couldn't see any sweat. It was
I
fine.
was I was trying real hard not to put my foot in my mouth and be an idiot because
Yeah.
I'd never hosted a podcast before. I didn't have any training. I don't know. So like
Yeah.
I think there are stories we can tell ourselves either about ourselves personally or about the industry or about access. And many of those things are real. There's definitely real hurdles in the arts world, as we all know, in terms of access to resources and access to
Mm-hmm.
people. But I wonder if there is sometimes an easier way to just like take that first step towards those relationships, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just one baby step outside the comfort zone, maybe. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Well, for me, it has been about showing up. And so, whatever community you are in, you have to show up to the thing. So, an example for me is I live in New York City and I also have access to a car, which is awesome. And every year in October, Doug Peltzman hosts the Hudson Valley Pottery Tour, which he has hosted for I don't know how long, maybe 10 or 12 years. It's been a while. I heard about it a few years ago and I started going to it because my mom is an avid knitter and the New York Sheep and Wool Festival happens the same weekend as the Hudson Valley Pottery Festival, the Hudson Valley Pottery Tour. And so she comes to New York, we go to the knitting stuff together, and I'm her plus one to that. And then the next day we go to the pottery tour, and she's my plus one to that. And so because I go to that every year, I see Doug's work every year, and he has a group of potters that are at his stop. Like Hawken Lindsay is one of the potters that I see there very often. And so just by showing up to that each year, appreciating the work, saying hi, talking to people, you just sort of get reps in where you are a part of that community. And I think that potters, for the most part, are really friendly people. And so if you walk up to somebody and you say, I have admired your work for years, like, it's so nice to meet you, most people are going to be really chill and like happy about that, And so I think as much as it can be nerve wracking to strike up those conversations, it really can be as simple as, it's so nice to meet you. And like asking some questions like, oh, well, I've always wondered, how did you do this? Or how did you get this effect? A lot of times potters will have open studios. And so you can go and you can ask them questions about their setup. So I think just kind of approaching things from a place of genuine curiosity also helps. So that's one thing, is just showing up. And if you know that there's, something happening, like, go to that thing and kind of make yourself known and say hi and talk to people. Another thing that I did, and I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, is I participated in the Cohorts program, which is Simon Levin's program. And that's a mentorship program where you're paired with a mentor for a full calendar year. And you meet with them twice a month, one-on-one. And then you also have a cohort of 5 or 6 other people that you meet with once a month. And it's all virtual. And that is good relationship building for a one-to-one perspective, because you're with your mentor who is an established figure in the space, which is great. But you're also meeting other potters who are on the same journey that you are on of trying to improve their work in one way or another. And that has opened up a whole new world to me, not only technically of like atmospheric firings and different ways of approaching things, but also relationally. I have this like new group of friends that are in other parts of the country that I've gone to visit, and they've introduced me to other people. And so that's just another way that I've been able to establish those relationships. If you're able to do programs, which can be cost prohibitive, I will admit, and that's a barrier, but that's just another great way of kind of formulating relationships if you're able to.
Yeah, and I think it's what Nsika always reminds me of every year is that it's this combination of both the virtual and the in-person,
Hmm.
like talking about cohorts being a virtual experience, so that does widen the opportunity of who you can connect with and have relationships with people across the country, across the world.
Hmm.
And then when an opportunity arises to actually get in the same room of those people, it's almost like you're jumping into the deep end when you are in the same room because
Hmm.
you've had the little, I don't know, small talk conversations, or even more than that, obviously, with cohorts, but I'm just even thinking like something with Instagram. You've had the little basic conversations throughout the entire year so that then if
Right.
an opportunity arises to actually see someone in person, you can just go straight to like,
Yeah.
hey, what's your greatest fear and biggest dream in life?
Yeah, you can kind of jump in. And like, when I was at Nsika, I was meeting a lot of people who I knew them through the internet, but I'd never met them in real life. And to me, there's a little bit of awkwardness about that because we all know the internet's like not real. And so my approach was just to lean into that and say, like, yeah, I know you from the internet, but we've never met in real life. And it's nice to, put a face with an Instagram handle. How's your time been at Nsika so far? So I wouldn't consider myself an extrovert, but I have developed the muscle of being able to say, it's nice to meet you. I've admired your work for a long time. Like, I'm Camille, and kind of take it from there. And I think a lot of times that's all that's necessary. And also, like, don't be annoying. Like, don't take up so much time from someone, Like, don't be that one person at the table that's just talking and not buying anything. Or, like, that's picking up every pot and looking at the bottom, but, like, putting it back. Like, just don't be annoying.
When you said go to a tour and ask questions, I was like, my brain was immediately like, yes, but.
Right. Within reason, like you be like read the room. But my main point with that was just like you have to show up. And if you don't show up, then there's an opportunity to get to know people or for them to know you. Don't be weird about it. Don't be like super stalkery. But, if there's like something that you like or somebody whose work you admire and you have an opportunity to go meet them in person, like go to the thing and say hi and buy something if you can afford to buy something, like it doesn't have to be complicated, but I think it is about kind of showing up in the community that you want to be a part of in a consistent fashion, whether that's attending a pottery tour every year, whether that's joining a workshop, whether that's going to a conference and like working up the courage to introduce yourself to somebody. It's really about like going through the reps of showing up and like being consistent and not being too weird.
I mean, we're also all potters, so we're all a little bit weird. So the bar
Yeah,
there
sure.
is at a
Yeah.
different
It's like
place.
that Hanson song. But yeah,
Did not see a Hanson reference coming up out of this
that's them,
conversation,
right?
but
We all
I'm
get a little bit weird sometimes. I think that's a
maybe
Hanson song.
I don't. The only song I'm ever gonna think of when the word Hanson comes up is Mbop. I mean,
Bop.
that's
Yeah.
it.
I think Weird is their song too. But
Probably. I believe you.
anyway.
I'm glad that you said the phrase putting in the reps again, because that's exactly what I was going to come back to, because it is a muscle and a skill. I think it
Hmm.
has less to do with introvert and extrovert and more to do with practice, just like a craft.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Like,
I'm not always good at it. Like my husband will accompany me sometimes to like art openings and gallery things because for good networking. And I am so bad at it. And sometimes he'll be like, listen, honey, I think we gotta like we gotta practice a little more. And he'll like, very gently like point out things that I like did or didn't do that I wasn't aware of that, if you like don't know, I can come across in, I think, very stern, kind of austere ways without knowing that I am
uh-huh.
doing that. And so like, if you don't know me, maybe I like come across in a certain way that's like a less than inviting. And so I don't say all this stuff about putting in the reps as if I'm like good at putting in the reps. Like I'll show up, but like sometimes I will suck at at the thing that I'm doing. But I'll still like I'll come and I'll try it again. And so I think it's just a lot of it is just like a matter of practice and like figuring out how to do things you're uncomfortable with.
It makes me think of jumping off a high dive every summer.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously being in the Midwest, it's not like I could be outside in a pool year round. And like at the beginning of that summer, the amount of mental effort it took to work yourself up to go up to that high dive and go
Yeah.
out to the edge and jump off was like,
Yeah.
okay, here we
Yeah.
go. And by the end of the summer, you were just like climbing up, running off, no big deal. And then it would start all over again the next summer because you would have this long gap in which you didn't do the thing.
Right.
That's where the strange metaphor my brain went to. But anywho,
Yeah.
so, oh my goodness. Well, I could obviously keep talking to you for ages because I adore you and it's just so lovely. But I do want to be cautious of your time. I'm sure you would like to do something else on a Saturday.
No, this has been fun. We can keep going.
Oh,
But,
man.
yeah.
What do you want people to know that we haven't talked about, that whether it's from the last 5 years, whether it's just something current, whatever I didn't ask, what do you wish people knew?
What do I wish people knew? We talked about the big stuff. I'm really excited about the Obama Presidential Library. That's like one of the coolest things I've ever been involved with. And so I can't wait to see how that project turns out. I feel really proud to be a part of that for a number of reasons. Number one, because it's the Obama Presidential Library. But number two, because it is part of a collaboration and part of a community that I'm really honored to be a part of, that Nikisha has built. So I'm really excited about that opening in June of this year of 2026. What else? I don't know. I think we've covered like so much ground. I guess like I am still making pots. Sometimes people ask me like, are you still doing pottery? And it's like, yes.
Yes.
I am still making pots. Still toiling away at the studio. Yeah. I mean, the obvious thing is that I am making a little potter at the moment, but I don't know when this will air. So I'm not sure if I'll still be, if she'll still be in the kiln or if she'll be out in the world.
She'll be
By the
glazed.
time this airs. Yeah. If she'll be fully vitrified.
Let's hope she's not vitrified.
Yeah. Food safe.
I don't plan on it taking food safe.
She'll be functional and she'll be beautiful. Much like my pots.
Exactly. Oh, that's like the most beautiful metaphor for growing a human. She's functional and beautiful. I mean, she might not be very functional for the first couple of years.
Yeah. As long, I need like the organs and all that stuff to work, as long as she can breathe and poop and eat and all that good stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I don't plan on it taking me until August to air this, so won't be tomorrow, but won't be August either. So for sure, she'll still be in the kiln, I think.
Yeah.
But maybe she'll be on her cooling cycle.
Yeah, the cones are going to be all the way down. She'll have reached cone 6, a solid cone 6, and we're just waiting to open that kiln.
Oh my God! See, now we were saying that you weren't going to do any kind of big announcement, but now the metaphors of firing and pregnancy, there's just a lot of opportunity here to have a lot of fun.
There really is. Yeah.
Like, forget the apps that tell you the fruit and the vegetable size.
Yeah, what cone is she at?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the first trimester is like the bisque phase, She's like a cone 05, cone 06. But she's really cooking now. So we're almost to the cooling.
Oh,
if this was a wood firing, we would be on like day 8 of a 12-day cycle.
Amazing. And also takes as many people to, it's also a community. It takes
oh my
a
God.
And all that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
We're about
That's
to find out.
That's incredible. I love it. Well, I'm gonna say on the record that if you don't text me when you're coming for the Chicago to see the library and the foundation, whether it be the opening or whether it be recently after, I'm only 90 minutes away. I am coming on the same day.
I will let you know. The chances of, I'm not sure if I will be attending when it opens because I will be pretty deep into my pregnancy at that point. If there's a photo op like we talked about with each of the Obamas baptizing my baby in utero, then I'll figure out a way to get there.
Yeah. I will be your photographer for that. Let's do it. Full maternity session. Brock, Michelle, Camille.
Yeah.
I mean, also your husband, maybe not. He's optional, really, in this.
Yeah. No, he'll be there too. He was a pretty important role in getting me to this point. So, but yeah,
Oh, I
no,
love it.
whenever I make it, I will absolutely let you know.
That'll be amazing. It won't be seafood, but we'll find the right spot to the Chicago equivalent.
I've had bad experience eating seafood, and I guess Chicago's not technically landlocked, but I don't know how much seafood you guys get out of the Great Lakes. So,
Oh, I mean, there's plenty
it's
of freshwater fish that we could, you only want that. There's salmon in the Great Lakes, and it's actually delicious, but you're not coming for, nobody comes to the Midwest for seafood. That's not,
yeah.
that's why we
I
eat
had a
it
bad
so much.
experience in Cleveland once
Ooh.
that I'm not eager to I'm not eager to revisit. So
Oh, no.
I'm a little cautious, but yeah,
We can stick
you
to
need a Chicago hot dog or something.
something. Yeah,
Not Chicago style pizza.
that's fair. That's, I mean, delicious in my 20s, but,
Yeah. Not even in my 20s did I like that lasagna pizza.
it's just not, you have to think of it as its own food. It is not, I've told Francesca this, it's not pizza the way it's a different thing. It's a different entity.
Yeah.
It's just its own cheesy experience. It's either going to always come back to healthcare or the Midwest. That is the actual undercurrent of this show. Forget the pots. It's either healthcare or Midwest.
Yeah. We had a pretty good off-ramp with the baby kiln metaphor in the cone back. So.
Yeah, I enjoy that a lot. I love it. Maybe I should just snip that out and put it in the beginning to encourage people to go to the end. Oh my goodness. Well, where on the internet do you want to send people these days to come see what you're up to and a future picture of the Obama's hands making a heart on your pregnant belly? Because I'm putting this out into the universe at this point. For you and selfishly for me.
Yeah. I am Camille at the Wheel everywhere. My website is camilleatthewheel.com, and that is the best place to go to sign up for my mailing list, which is the surefire way to know when I am updating my web shop. It's also, there's a contact form if you are interested in commissions or custom orders. You can contact me through that site as well. So camilleatthewheel.com, and I'm on Instagram at camilleatthewheel.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. It was so good to see you.
You too.
I hope this conversation with Camille has given you permission to exhale a little bit. Because if you've been quietly carrying the weight of feeling like your art practice doesn't count, and hear the air quotes there, that it doesn't count unless it's your full-time thing, or unless you have shop updates that are consistent, or your following is growing at a specific pace, or you're visibly hustling in all the ways that the internet tells you to hustle, and working in the studio until 1 a.m., I just want to say, Camille has worked on some of the most meaningful ceramics projects I have ever heard about, and she still has a day job. And she's not apologizing for it. What struck me about this conversation is how much freedom came from Camille being really honest with herself about what she needed. Not what the ceramics world expected of her, or what her follower count seemed to demand online, or instead, what actually felt sustainable and meaningful for her specific life. It's okay if your version of this looks different from the person that you admire the most on the internet. It's okay if commission work excites you more than shop drops. It's okay if the most creatively nourishing thing you can do this year is quietly make work that you never even show anywhere, let alone list for sale. There is no single definition of a serious maker. And Camille's story, 5 years later, is a beautiful reminder of that. As always, if you're feeling a bit alone in trying to figure out whatever version of this unique making life actually works for your own life, you don't have to do it by yourself. There are makers all charting their own unique path, having these exact conversations right now inside of the community. Makers who are full-time, makers who are side hustling, dreaming of going full-time, makers who never plan to quit the day job, and everywhere in between, all trying to build something that actually lasts. If that sounds like your kind of people, then come find us at makersplaybook.com/community. One more time, since your hands are probably covered in clay, It's makersplaybook.com/community. Until next time, my friends, go get back to making your dreams a reality, because together, we've got this. Audio post-production of this podcast is made possible by help from Kirsty Kotzfan, with promotional material assistance from Queenie Maliki. The Maker's Playbook podcast is recorded on the original homelands of the Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee people, where the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present.